Hello and welcome back to Visionomics. On this channel, we talk about anything economic, investing in business. Alibaba will be the world's largest e-commerce company by 2021. It sold goods worth $1.2 trillion on its website, roughly double what Amazon did in the same time period in 2014. They raised $22 billion in the largest IPO in history on the New York Stock Exchange. On the first day of trading, it had a market capitalization of about $170 billion. A little higher than Amazon. China's GDP was on track to surpass that of the United States, and investors were clamoring for stock in the country's dominant e-commerce company. Everything went as planned for the first 6 years the company was publicly traded. Their stock price more than tripled, and their revenue and profitability continued to rise. At their 2020 peak, giving them a market value of $800 billion. They appeared to be on track to become the first Chinese technology company with a market cap greater than $1 trillion. However, things have drastically deteriorated in the last 2 years. Their stock price has dropped by 70%. After criticizing the Chinese government in a speech, founder Jack Ma went missing for a while, which initially turned public opinion against him. However, the company's problems extend beyond negative media coverage. After a decade of rapid growth, their financial performance has been steadily deteriorating. Revenue has plateaued or even decreased slightly in recent quarters. This slight decrease in revenue has resulted in a dramatic drop in profitability over the previous year. The net profit has dropped by 75% since its peak in 2020. So, what happened with Alibaba? How could such a massive corporation fail right in front of our eyes? To understand Alibaba's demise, one must first understand its rise, particularly that of its founder, Jack Ma. He launched the company from his apartment in 1999. The company began by creating websites, but quickly shifted its focus to e-commerce. In the early 2000s, they launched Alibaba.com, a B2B e-commerce platform, with the goal of connecting global importers with China's rapidly expanding export sector. Because of its abundant cheap labor and rapidly expanding industrial infrastructure, China was able to produce manufactured goods at far lower costs than Western nations. Large importers, such as Walmart, can send representatives to China to negotiate contracts with Chinese producers in person. This, however, is impossible for smaller importers. If you are a small business, you can connect with Chinese suppliers directly on Alibaba.com. Extending the success of Alibaba.com, Taobao and Tmall, their two direct-to-consumer marketplaces, were launched. You can think of these as roughly equivalent to Amazon selling electronics and other consumer items. They made significant investments in logistics infrastructure and pioneered the use of robots in distribution facilities. This is an example of first-mover advantage at work. Their ability to reinvest profits enabled them to build a multi-billion-dollar logistics network. This enabled them to deliver goods at a lower cost than their competitors. By 2015, they had nearly achieved monopoly status in China, with an estimated 78% market share. They accumulated so much cultural and political power in China that they essentially invented their own festival. November 11th is Singles Day, which was founded in 2009 by single university students. That day, Alibaba announced that there would be significant discounts. "If you're alone, we can at least send you stuff to make you happy," they joked. Alibaba sold $84 billion in gross merchandise on Singles Day in 2021, making it an unofficial holiday similar to Amazon Prime Day in the United States. More than 8 times as much as Amazon sold during Prime Day. They used the $22 billion they received from their 2014 IPO, as well as their e-commerce profits, to build a massive digital empire. Alibaba Pictures, its own film studio, a cloud computing business, food delivery, digital media platforms, and even international e-commerce activities are among them. Between their IPO and their high in 2021, their sales increased 13-fold to approximately $140 billion. This is one of the greatest growth stories in the history of any company. Alibaba's founder, Jack Ma, appeared to be on top of the world, similar to Elon Musk's rockstar status. Jack Ma criticized China's state-run banks in a speech in November 2020. He claimed that banking regulators and state-owned enterprise bureaucracy stifled innovation. After delivering this speech, he stopped making public appearances. It was quite troubling when he did not appear on a TV show that he was supposed to attend for the next 3 months. He reappeared in Hong Kong a few months later. It's important to note that he was not technically affiliated with Alibaba at the time of his disappearance, and no one knows what happened to him during that time. He stepped down as chairman in 2018, but he remained a significant shareholder and was well known in pop culture for his association with the company. Whatever the precise reasons for Ma's mysterious disappearance, it was clear that the Chinese government was concerned about the nation's tech monopoly and financial provider Ant Financial's growing influence. The company, founded by Jack Ma and 33 other people and now owned by the Alibaba Group, it is in charge of the Alipay mobile payment system, which is tightly linked to Alibaba's e-commerce systems and is used by approximately 1 billion people in China shortly after Ma's infamous statement condemning the government in November. The company was preparing for a $30 billion IPO, which would have been the largest ever. Ant Financial manages the Alibaba money market fund in addition to processing payments. Customers benefit from higher yields than they would receive from traditional banks. Ant Financial is able to offer more enticing yields in part because it is not registered as a bank and thus is exempt from the same level of capital requirements and other laws. Alibaba had grown to become the world's largest money market fund by 2020, with more than $150 billion in assets under management. Chinese financial regulators were concerned that the massive underregulated fund would expose the country's financial system to unanticipated risks. Furthermore, the fact that Ma was publicly criticizing the state-run banks that Ant Financial was competing with for deposits didn't help. The country's top financial regulators, including the People's Bank of China, called Jack Ma shortly after his speech to ask him to explain Ant Financial's business plan. Ma's responses clearly did not satisfy the regulators, as the IPO was formally cancelled. This was the beginning of the end for Alibaba. Ant Financial's, on the other hand, was cancelled. The Alibaba Group was undoubtedly hurt by the IPO. Their main e-commerce platforms remained the most important aspect of their business. They made significant logistics investments to gain a commanding market position, but they also used a more sinister strategy to eliminate their competitors. Alibaba sells the products through independent merchants, and Alibaba takes a commission on each transaction. Until recently, Alibaba had a rule called merchant exclusivity. This means you are not permitted to sell your goods on any competing marketplace if you want to sell them on Alibaba. With Alibaba being China's largest e-commerce platform by far, the majority of third-party merchants would lose sales if they were banned. Alibaba was able to capture the majority of the market by employing anti-competitive tactics. In April 2021, the Chinese Antitrust Authority fined the corporation $2.8 billion and ordered them to discontinue their merchant exclusivity policy. This was the nation's largest fine in its history. The removal of merchant exclusivity opened the door for competing e-commerce businesses, specifically JD.com and Pinduoduo. Alibaba's domestic market share fell from 78% in 2016 to 58% in 2021. And it appears that in 2022, they will cover significantly more ground. These losses have benefited the new e-commerce portal Pinduoduo. Pinduoduo, which was barely known a few years ago, is rapidly gaining market dominance. It allows users to form groups and purchase goods from manufacturers at volume discounts. It has become extremely popular in rural areas of the country, where consumers have less money and are thus more cost-conscious. Alibaba has largely ignored rural areas in favor of more lucrative urban areas. According to reports, Pinduoduo has required some of its employees to work up to 90 hours per week, contributing to the company's meteoric rise. The increased competition has severely harmed Alibaba's profitability, prompting it to reduce platform fees and increase incentives for new merchants. As a result of these market share dynamics, net earnings have fallen by 3/4 over the last 18 months. The primary e-commerce business faced challenges in 2021. The cloud computing division of the conglomerate was its one shining achievement. This provides computing capacity to businesses with heavy computational workloads. Since businesses discovered that using Alibaba's cloud was less expensive than using their own in-house servers in recent years, their cloud revenue has increased significantly. However, the cloud industry has recently experienced 3 consecutive quarters of declines, and in 2021, the cloud industry will face political pressures in both domestic and international markets. ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, has replaced Alibaba as its global cloud supplier. They did this most likely in response to pressure from the US government, which is concerned about Chinese cloud service providers accessing the data of American TikTok users. They are also under domestic political pressure. The Chinese government is concerned about private firms managing sensitive workloads from their own enterprises or government bodies, and has recently made a major push for data protection. China Telecom, a state-owned mobile phone company, has invested billions of dollars in developing its own cloud computing infrastructure. In the eyes of many government-affiliated organizations in the country, China Telecom and other state-backed cloud computing providers are replacing Alibaba. In the Chinese market, Alibaba is under intense competitive pressure from both the public and private sectors, and it does not appear that things will improve anytime soon. While their local operations are under significant strain, their air national expansion activities have been a huge success. So that's what's going on. Their air national e-commerce revenue has nearly doubled in the last 5 years, reaching $8.5 billion in the calendar year 2021. This accounts for only 9% of their total e-commerce revenue. Because China continues to generate the vast majority of their revenue, the overseas portion is expected to grow significantly in the future. And they are now investing more in the Lazada e-commerce brand. It has a capital investment of $378 million and operates in Southeast Asia. As of May of this year, South America, Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia were the most developed e-commerce markets. However, if Alibaba expands its delivery network, they could see tremendous growth. Alibaba will never return to its 2010s heyday, when it had near monopoly status, and it is clear that the Chinese government does not want any single technological company to become overly powerful. It isn't all bad news, though. They are still profitable and have approximately $40 billion in net cash on hand. They are repurchasing $25 billion in their own stock, taking advantage of the current share price slump. This is the equivalent of 10% of their market capitalization. Alibaba, on the other hand, may never fully regain his former glory. Okay, everyone, what are your thoughts on Alibaba? Thank you for watching, as always, and we'll see you in the next video. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Visionomics, and thank you for watching, until the end.